Hello, this is David of 3 Orcs. Today we're going to review starter locations for rogues and thieves around the Viscounty of Verbobonc for the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign. As I've commented many times in previous videos about starting locations for characters in the Viscounty of Verbobonc and the surrounding area for the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign, I think that you need to explore the areas as far as Furyondy and Veluna and even Greyhawk in the Wild Coast to find good locations for somebody's background for their character to be from, whatever organization they're associated with and NPCs that they know. This will give the players the ability to have ties to that community and give them resources at their disposal for training, for supplies, information, and even receive help throughout the campaign. Today we're going to go over rogues and thieves here in this article that I have shown you in the top left hand corner. I have some brief notes about each of the locations that a typical thief might be from, and also we'll go over some typical rogue archetypes to give you a good idea of what kind of thieves could be from those different areas. I think that most rogues might want to come from a thieves guild, a big organization that provides training and support and supplies, but they don't necessarily have to be from one of those guilds. There's not that many guilds in the area. There's a big one in Verbobonc and the sister city Rhynehurst, and of course there's a large one in Dyvers and Greyhawk, and of course there must be some over there in the Wild Coast. The farther we go away from Verbobonc, I'm not going to go into too much detail, just to point them out. The first thing I want to show is rogue archetypes from the original Red Box basic D&D rule set. What they thought they were, the ideas of what kind of thief they were back in the day. This first picture was created by Jeff Easley of the Mentor D&D Player's Manual 1983, the Red Box. The next picture is a rogue. It's kind of hidden in the bottom right hand corner. He's sneaking into a giant's bath as a great fountain pours into a 30-foot wide, 6-foot deep pool. Also by Jeff Easley from the Expert D&D module, the XL1. Quest for the Heartstone, 1984. And of course this next one is the guard who is willing to look the other way, who might earn some extra coin instead of a knife in the back. Another portrait by Jeff Easley of Lankmire, City of Adventure, a D&D campaign pack featuring Fritz Lieber's Pfeiffer and the Grey Mouser, TSR, 1985. And the next one is the hidden city of Sudaram. It trembles below the Earth Dragon's volcano, prompting a rush for the docks. Ron Lindum and Val Lackey Lindum, AD&D Adventure, the A1 through 4 module series called Scourge of the Slave Lords, TSR 1986. I'm displaying these pictures to show different rogues of different archetypes and different situations. So a quote from Gary Gygax. It was a Q&A session from N-World. It was part 5. He's quoted to say that the thief was based on Jack of Shadows, with a touch of REH's Conan, rather than solely on the Grey Mouser. Mouser was too good a swordsman to serve as the pure model. Okay, we're going to go ahead and show locations of where rogues can be from. The map of the location of Verbobonc is here on the screen, and that's the capital of the Viscounty of Verbobonc, right along the river, the Velverdiver River. And to the north of the river is Furyondy. I call it the ancient holy kingdom of Furyondy. And to the west, along the river and the Great Road, is Rhynehurst, which is also a river town. It's not quite as big as Verbobonc, but it is a sizable town with many docks and many shops and entertainment. It's a very popular place for bards. And to the north, of course, is the Great Western Road. That's the Great Caravan Road that connects the city of Greyhawk to past Veluna, continuing west. So this road right here along the Velverdiver River is not the Great Road. I call it the Great Road, but it's not the Great Western Road, which is labeled up here. That goes through Jarl, through Furyondy. Verbobonc. Much of the crime throughout the Viscounty of Verbobonc is orchestrated by a secret organization known as the Family. Its members are more than just leg breakers and petty criminals. Even the lowest ranking members of the family are skilled rogues with quick feet and smooth words. Although the family is persuasive, it certainly operates at a minimum in Verbobonc City and Rhynehurst. Its exact structure and headquarters are unknown. The family is organized in a hierarchy, and members rarely know anyone outside their immediate superior or subordinates. The lowest rank in the organization consists of friends of the family, who receive their orders from their cousins. Cousins, in turn, receive orders from brothers and sisters, who seem to administer the family operations. It's rumored that their brothers receive orders from shadowy aunts and uncles of the family, and those masterminds are virtually unknown, and they've certainly never been captured or identified. This is a map of the city of Verbobonc. I did place a couple safe houses and entrances to the underground lair of the guild itself. Let's see, we'll go ahead and zoom in to that neighborhood that I placed it at. I used a little bit different symbols from the rest. It's a black house outline here. Let me zoom in farther for you. And if you click on it, I added this new location called B32, the Manor House. It's a dilapidated manor house that looks completely uninhabitable. So rickety and rotted with a minor tremor might cause the roof to cave in. Indeed, many parts of the roof has been done just that, leaving gaping holes for rain and wind to wear away the housing innards. And so I added a Hidden Thieves Guild here. For those in the know, the basement and sub-basement is better than perfect condition. As one knocks upon the partially concealed cellar door and utters the password, a hatch will open in short order, accepting the ingress of the initiated into the hallowed halls of the city's Hidden Thieves Guild. Here, under the surface of the city streets, shadowy figures gather to discuss their next targets for burglary or robbery, train one another in the criminal arts, or simply rest in a place where they need not fear easy discovery, hidden in an abandoned section of the city's sewer system. The Thieves Guild is one of the most dominant underground forces in Verbobonc. Most citizens are aware of their existence and know where to look if they need to contact them, but very few know where their headquarters are. So those seeking to access the guild will first have to pass a series of tests, even after discovering the location of the entrance. However, those who pass the test will find incredible resource groups of allies. And I got this from another article I downloaded off RPGNet. A good example of a test to get into the Thieves Guild that you could roleplay a new character joining the Thieves Guild. This is something I added. But what I created though was the location itself in the city. So let's go back to the map here, and then if we go north behind the church Cathedral of Trithrin, this is more in the Elven district, or right on the edge, and this location is called the Guild Safe House. The door lies hidden with appropriate motions. Dozens of locks of varying metals slide loose with a whirl of gears. I got this description from dScryb, was I'm a member and a subscription holder to that. But anyway, what this is the Thief Safe House for Verbobonc. This is used to stage and organize missions. Like a team of thieves that are gathered together to go on a mission, and this is where their contact will tell them what to do. It's just one of the example safe houses in the city that they use. They don't necessarily have to use a safe house most of the time. Sometimes they'll use a warehouse, or they'll use an inn or a tavern. But this is actually one of the locations that they actually use, and I put a map here, so that kind of helps. As you can see on the map here, there's quite a few inns here in the city, taverns, outside and in the walls. In fact, some of the taverns outside the walls have contacts, and they have a relationship in the guild, and they actually have underground access beneath the walls of Verbobonc to get in and out, to slip either over the walls or under the walls, depending on the location, to get in and out the gates without being seen by the guards or the authorities. The Thieves Guild, that's the dominant player here in the Viscounty of Verbobonc and Verbobonc City, is the Battirovka Family. Much of the crime throughout the Viscounty is orchestrated by a secret organization known as the Family. So when it comes to politics and its organization, the family deals with vice and smuggling and crime. Its existence has arguably done more good than harm to Verbobonc. Most importantly, the family knows it can only prosper when peace and wealth flow through the land. And in many cases, the goals of the Viscount and the goals of the family are the same: to drive away evil monsters, to increase the prosperity of the citizenry, and so on. Furthermore, the family avidly guards against outsiders setting up any thieving operation in Verbobonc. One of the foremost goals of the members of the family is to look out for independent freelance operators. They call them black sheep, and see that they ply their trades elsewhere, or they end up floating face down in the Veluna River. So if a player insists on being a rogue agent, not associated with a guild, he's going to get into a lot of trouble, mostly in the city, because that's where our eyes are everywhere, and they'll probably see him doing whatever he's up to if he does decide to do anything, misbehave in the city, and that'll be a plot point or a role-playing situation that the player would have to deal with, and the DM will have to the dungeon master will have to make sure that the dungeon master will have to think about when they're outside the city. Depending on the town, there's not a lot of presence at some of these smaller towns. Some of the larger towns like Rhynehurst or Penwick, they will definitely have a Thieves Guild contact there at least, or a small Thieves Guild band on station there. Maybe they're in the middle of an operation and they happen to catch the player doing something, and that's another way they're going to get entangled with the Thieves Guild. Now, if you flip that around and say in his background of the Thieves Guild, he can count on them for resources and information and supplies and training. So they all have a secret sign, of course. They in a tavern, they can flash the sign, and only another thief from that guild would recognize it, telling him that he's a member or an uncle or a sister or whatever. Of course, you can put Thieves' Cant in your campaign, and I have that down here on the right. Let's see, there it is. And I found an article about the complex secret language of Thieves Guilds, with some gestures and things like that to add to the role-playing if you want. Politics. So, this is not to say that the family is without its enemies. Certainly, the Church of St. Cuthbert would like to see all these miscreants out of the Viscounty. The Church of Zilchis, they are often victims of the family's burglars and pickpockets. Also, actively, they oppose the family. In Verbobonc City, many family members spend much of their time trying to stay ahead of the vigilant gentlemen of the watch, or the city watch, whatever you want to call them. And of course, they're their own organization within the city. And they got members and organization and who they report to, which is Lord Maracus Willem Hax, Lord Hax. And he's got his own political agenda going on. And they're all part of the city of defense. And a little bit of information about the billets of St. Cuthbert that accompany the watch. I went over this in the City of Verbobonc video that I made some months before. Continuing onwards, there's entrances hidden in the abandoned section of the city sewer system. The Thieves Guild is one of the most dominant underground forces. We talked about that. There's Test, and of course the Manor House. So as a choice for a player, as a starter character and background for a campaign, this is an excellent choice for him to start from, being a member of the Thieves Guild, either located here from the city of Verbobonc or maybe Rhynehurst, or even possibly any of the smaller villages up and down the Veluna River or merchant ways, if he wants to be more low-key in his involvement with the guild, but still be a member. Also, this points out that if you're not a member and you happen to be in these locations and you do perform any kind of actions for a rogue, that you might get caught, they might be seen, and then you have to deal with that whole mess. And the Dungeon Master might have to add that scenario into the campaign for the players. Okay, next is Dyvers. On the Thieves' Quarter, in the city of Dyvers, the free lands of Dyvers, they host the Thieves Guild operations, but they also play the political game and with other guilds in the city. Guild wars can also be competitive. One of the longest standing wars is between the Thieves Guild and the Society of Courtesans for control over the Fences Guild. To protect their own independence, the Fences Guild attempts to play off the courtesans against the thieves. Aware of this, the thieves must more than once attempted to take over the courtesans directly, or it was in the middle of this fight that the League of Assassins made their successful bid for independence. They have now joined the fray, seeking to annex all the other three guilds. So let's take a look at that. As you can see, Dyvers is located to the northeast of Verbobonc on the way to Greyhawk City, there on the map. They're located there on the south shores of the Dive. We have a description of Dyvers, of course. It's a large cosmopolitan city. Anybody that visits Dyvers will see the emerald spires of the Mages Guild, just towering into the sky. Enormous wonder. The city, Dyvers, is an independent city. I've got to remind you that it is nestled on the shore of the Dive, Lake of the Unknown Depths. Because of its location at the mouth of the Velverdiver River, most water traffic from nations west of Dyvers, Veluna, Bissell, and Furyondy on the northern side of the Dive passes through the city. And of course, that's why the guilds are so important. And the Thieves Guild thrives here with the Assassins Guild. This is probably one of the next biggest cities in the Western Flaness next to Greyhawk City. Dyvers is ruled by a council. This institution, the High Council of Dyvers, is formed by several persons. The Magister, elected by the populace once every 6 years. He would be an appointed representative from the noble families. Also an appointed representative from the Dyvers Merchant Association. Also another one appointed from the Dyvers Mages Guild. And another appointed from the Dyvers Churches and Temples. Another appointed representative of the Thieves Guild, and another one of the Craftsmen Guild, and a publicly elected official by the city's inhabitants, a publicly elected official by the inhabitants of the area outside the walls in general, because there's more to Dyvers than just the city. The day-to-day work of governing the city is not done by the council itself, but the Dyvers City Council. The Council of Eight has the Magister as its president and has its other members appointed throughout the consensus by the High Council. I reviewed this so you're aware of the kind of city this is and how the Thieves Guild and Assassins Guild thrives here and why it's so connected to Verbobonc City. Now we're going to talk specifically about the Thieves Guild. If a player likes the idea of Dyvers, the atmosphere, the kind of guilds that are there, the kind of politics that's happening in the campaign, the Union's relationship with the Thieves Guild is shaky at best. The Thieves would like nothing better than to do away with Maddox Vren. Since he came into power, smuggling on any large scale is virtually impossible. Vren supposes that there are more riches and power to be gained through fairly honest and straightforward business dealings than to risk the wrath of the military and the city government for quick profits made from the smuggling. Vren supposes that there are more riches and power to be gained through fairly honest and straightforward business dealings than to risk the wrath of the military and the city government for quick profits made through smuggling. To date, the Thieves Guild has had to satisfy itself with small operations, usually involving non-native merchants and those few union members who are approachable. That's a key right there. The Thieves Guild deals itself with small operations and non-native merchants. Obviously, that'd be merchants from the city of Greyhawk or the city of Verbobonc, and that can come into play in the campaign. And all this would be tied in, some of this would be tied into the Temple of Elemental Evil, because Nolb, which is the village next to the temple, helps provide manpower, slaves, and supplies to the temple. And the temple, as I said before many times in my videos, they don't exist in a vacuum. They have to be getting support from somewhere, because there's a lot of troops, a lot of monsters, a lot of people there at the temple that need to be provided for. Not just slaves for brute work, but for sacrifices and undead use. And also, the supplies there must be tremendous. And also, throughout the campaign, by a week basis, there's over a dozen new recruits of brigands, bandits, pirates, and even monsters. And so those forces are growing week by week. And those supplies have to come somewhere. And they do get a lot of their information and supplies from Dyvers. And obviously, the Thieves Guild might have something to do with it in one way or another. So one major gain the Thieves Guild has made against the Union has been the plan long in the making. For the past 6 years, the Guild has a mole working as a member of the Union. The mole, his name is Brol Hopcroft, has recently elected to the position of Assistant Guildmaster. So anyway, that's what's going on with him. At present, the Thieves Guild loathe to do away with Maddox Vren. realizing that they have very little support from within the Union and not wishing to risk guild war at this time. So that's just a little bit of background of what's going on with the Thieves Guild. And they do have contacts, and they do work with merchants and the Thieves Guild, the city of Verbobonc as well. So there's a lot of living Greyhawk modules. I do deal with that, actually. And it's a great resource to pull information from into a campaign. And of course, I would be remiss to not talk about the Assassin's Guild of Dyvers. As far as I know, in the campaign of Temple of Elemental Evil, the Viscounty of Verbobonc, Veluna, Furyondy, and Dyvers and Greyhawk, I don't know, within several hundred miles of Verbobonc, I think this is the only Assassin's Guild that is known. Of course, there's assassins around. There's free agents or an assassin that might work with the Thieves Guild for in different parts of the land, like different cities. But as an organized Assassin's Guild, I believe this is the only one without going to maybe the Wild Coast or the city of Greyhawk. So this is a description here about the city again that we went over. Business goes where the money is. This is a great saying for the city of Dyvers, because this is where the money is, and a lot of merchant activity flows through here throughout the lands. The question of outlawing the Assassin's Guild is not so much an ethical or moral one as a practical one. In the first place, the mayor and its oligarchs, realizing that legalizing such a guild would gravely offend many of the Backlunist trading partners. I believe that would be the ones to the west. The resultant loss of trade would be a severe blow to the city's interests. Second, the fact that guild's assassins, in addition to those thieves and beggars, are forbidden in the city as a matter of civic pride to most citizens of Dyvers. Okay, that all makes sense so far. They like to point an accusing finger at their bitter rival, the city of Greyhawk. As we all know, City of Greyhawk has the biggest Thieves Guild and the biggest Assassins Guild, and probably the most deadliest. And berate them for being a city ruled by thieves. They would never stoop to such depths themselves, or so they say. Anyone who would think that there are no such guilds in Dyvers is gravely mistaken. A common proverb in Dyvers is this: business goes where the money is. And this also rings true for the assassins. Assassins' guilds are considered rogue guilds under the law, and the members are actively prosecuted. So they have an organization. It's a complex one. There's 4 separate assassin guilds that are active in Dyvers. There's a few hired killers that operate alone, which could be found in almost any city or a large town. Most of the time they're at war with each other. They're sabotaging their efforts. They attempt to kill rival assassins, on and on. All this stuff's going on with them. And then I have a description of the 4 organizations: the Night Skulls, the Silver Vipers, the Eye, and the Solitary Assassins, and Messa's organization, and Fenvril and Kuruku, who are prominent figures. And of course we have adventure hooks of the Dyvers Assassins Guild to incorporate this into any campaign, including the Temple of Elemental Evil. You could get involved stopping the war, poisoning somebody, an illegal assassination, on and on and on, the Veiled Mage. I got all this information, again, from the wonderful work they did at Living Greyhawk of the Dyvers region. And I don't use this material too much into my campaign, but I'm happy to know it's here for me as a DM running the campaign, just in case one of the players happens to choose that location and be a shady rogue, or maybe if you allow him an assassin type character in the campaign, or relations in their background to the Assassin's Guild from Dyvers. So that could be not necessarily game breaking, letting a player be an assassin character, a class, but his background could be influenced by it, or he has connections to it. And I love the material being here for me to draw from. Okay, back to the main article. So we talked about Dyvers. Gnomes. So gnome thieves can be from the village of Celene, Nambarul, in the Gnarly Forest. They can also be from the Gnomesburg, Gnome Quarter of Verbobonc Town. That's the southern part actually as the northern part of the city of Verbobonc. The map of Verbobonc is upside down, by the way. See that? To the bottom of the map, this gate, that's the north gate. This is the side of Furyondy. And Gnome Town, or whatever you call it, Gnomesburg, is north of the river, the Diver River. So this whole entire area right here, it's all gnomes. And I believe, and of course, one of the chapels is the Laughing Rogue Hostel. And I think there's another one that has something to do with it as well. And of course, there's a few more taverns that's related to rogues. The Riverside Inn and the Leicester's House of Cards. The Molten Spigot Tavern. Season's End. And the Rusty Nail. All these can be a little shady. And something to think about in the campaign. So a gnome can actually be from the city of Verbobonc and have a wealth of locations and information and NPCs to draw from. I won't go into every detail of these locations, but I think I did that in another video before. Okay, so continuing, most commonly from the gnomes is the Free Alliance of the Cron Hills in the Greenway Valley. Let's go ahead and scroll down to the south here. That's the Cron Hills and the Greenway Valley right there. So Tolvar is the capital of the Greenway Valley, the Free Assembly of the Cron Hills, that's what they call themselves. And of course, there's several more towns within the valley itself. And Sheer Knob is outside the valley, outside of Cron Fortress. That's a gnome town. And it's also Ossenbralt and Larnystow have gnomes, I believe. And they're outside the Greenway Valley. So if you want to be a gnome and be a rogue class or multi-class, the Greenway Valley would be an excellent location to be from. And reasons for being a rogue there can be because they're mischievous and they like to have fun. That could be a really good reason for a background character from the gnome area. Now the next race is Elves. Elven dual class thieves can either be from the Elves of the Gnarly Forest, a clan called Serendil. This clan has been a reputation of providing the finest elven warriors. Or they can be from the Elven Enclave of the Verbobonc City. Let's look at Verbobonc City first. On the south side of it, in the Elven Quarter, the graphics don't fully represent the elven nature, the look, the architecture of the description of the city. You do see a lot of trees here in the graphics, but it's safe to say that that quarter of the city is supposed to look more like one of the gnarly forest elf communities, and that's a place where elven rogue can thrive. He could be part of the Thieves Guild. Or he could not be. He could be independent. It would be hard for the Thieves Guild to deal with an elf character in the city of Verbobonc. These elves have been here longer than the humans have. And they're entrenched. And that's their own quarter. And very seldom do humans actually go into that section of the city. So that would be like their haven, their base station, their family. And if they wanted to, they can easily ply their trade as a rogue. Maybe in the inns and taverns there in that quarter, or just outside of it, but not shove it into the face of the Thieves Guild themselves. Or they could be part of the Thieves Guild, and they can actually work with them. So it's up to the player, if he's from the city of Verbobonc, to choose which path he wants to follow. The next location is the Gnarly Forest. As we talked about earlier, the 4 clans here, from top to bottom, they could be from any one of these clans here and be a multi-class thief something, or they could just be a straight class if they want. I think if you wanted to play a straight thief, I think to be able to hone their abilities as a thief, they probably took many trips outside the clan to visit some of the human cities, and they enjoy that sort of thing of stealing from the rich humans. The rich, fat, plump, prosperous humans, maybe on the wild coast like Narwhal, or into the Verbobonc area like Penwick, or even Verbobonc, or up to Dyvers. I see them more mobile in their activities. But of course, if you can come up with a really interesting background why they'd be a rogue, that'd be great. But that's one of the locations where elves would be from. If you wanted to, an elf could be from the fairy kingdom of Celene. I don't see that happening. That'd be very rare. but it could be a player character, definitely. You just have to come up with a good reason why they have those skills and why they left Celene to go apply this trade. Okay, next on the list is Dwarves. Dwarves commonly are from Rockhall in the Lortmill Mountains. And there's another clan there too, which I'll show you. And here's Rockwall, and there's also Irondelve. And also far to the west, and the border of Veluna, there's another dwarven called Rockholm. It's right here at the edge of the map here. You can barely see it. So there's actually three dwarven clans to choose from. And so I think same thing, idea with the same idea with the elves is, for a dwarf to follow the thief trade, the rogue. He could actually apply his trade within these towns because Rockhall and Irondelve has a top side, and there's humans and other demi-human races live up there too. And so there's also taverns. So he can actually apply his trade, his beginnings. He could gleefully enjoy plucking coins out of passing merchants' belt pouches at the tavern. And that'd be a good reason why he would be a rogue and why he would follow that path. Then the next is Halflings. Halfling thieves can come from the city of Verbobonc. There's not many Halflings in the city. There's a few, but they could be. There's always that one odd demi-human in any organization. That's the Halfling. He's in the Thieves Guild. Or maybe he works at one of the taverns, and he secretly is a thief, and he tries to keep a low profile while he's performing his activities so the local Thieves Guild doesn't pick up on him. He's probably has a cover, like maybe he's one of the cooks or something. And then, of course, there's the Halfling community of Littleborough. It's on the western half of the Viscounty. There's Verbobonc right here on the river there, and to the west is Littleborough, right here along the Slibvara River. It's all Halflings. But it's got to be mentioned that it's more common for Halfling communities in Furyondy to the north. So if you didn't want to be from Littleborough or independent around the Viscounty or in the city, you definitely come from a community from Furyondy as well. Another pure Halfling community is located in the southern Viscounty called Gallows Corner. And Gallows Corner, right here south of Hamlet and south of the Greenway Valley, located right there. It's the next stop just north of Ostfirk, which is on the border of Celene, the Fairy Kingdom. The rest of the family is in Rhynehurst. I'm looking at the map. You see Verbobonc on the river, and to the west is Rhynehurst. The large town of Rhynehurst is owned by the Celene family. Lord Alwyn Celene. The Rhynehurst controls significant holdings along the western edge of the Viscounty of Verbobonc. The town of Rhynehurst sits about 30 miles upriver from the Verbobonc city, where the Slibvara River flows into the Velverdiva River. The confluence of those two rivers is a prime location for trading port, and Rhynehurst has been a trading town since the earliest days. There's a large collection of Rhynehurst here, which is another thing. And Rhynehurst is another great archetype for a rogue to keep in mind for a background for a character. They have a semi-permanent encampment just outside the Rhynehurst. The river folk are more welcome in Rhynehurst than anywhere else in the Viscounty. The Rhynehurst is rowdy. It's an exciting place to boast some of the best wines, the best parties, and the best bards of all of Verbobonc. They enjoy low taxes, very lax laws. They're welcoming stop for would-be criminals. However, two factors to keep crime in Rhynehurst low. The first is the pride and the unity of the residents of Rhynehurst feels, promoting a community spirit is resistant to endemic crime. The second factor is the prevalence of the family, the organized crime network of Verbobonc. The family likes to have a secure area to pass goods, both legal and illegal, and so the family works to protect the status quo in Rhynehurst. Smugglers, con artists, and pickpockets from outside the family are not welcome and dealt with harshly. And of course, the article continues more along that line there of description of the city. And then, of course, is politics with the Viscount. And of course, another thing to keep in mind of the local churches. The Church of Farlong is one of the two main centers of worship of Farlong in the Viscounty itself. The head of the church is Father Pilchus. We talked about that in my Clerics article. And another one is the Lounge of Lear. It's a tavern and art house dedicated to the worship of Lear, the goddess of poetry, prose, literature, and art. Many of the Eredin sorcerers and wizards worship Lear, particularly those who dislike dScryb. There's other churches here besides those two, of course. So there's also probably some small chapels dedicated to the rogue or thief guild gods. But the Rhynehurst would be an excellent location for a player to be from. But he would most likely be a member of the Thieves Guild, unless maybe he was dual class, where his side activities would go unnoticed because of his primary class, like maybe he was a wizard, and people don't really suspect wizards of robbery or thieving. Now let's go ahead and move on to my next part, Archetypes of Rogues and Thieves. I made a list of some archetypes of rogues, thieves, that you can play or roleplay in any campaign in any rule sets, even AD&D, first and second edition, or 0 D&D. The base class was called the Thief. It's originally known as the Thief. It's a character class in Dungeons & Dragons. They cannot cast spells, but they are experts in stealth. So that's the ultimate archetype of a thief. They probably work for a thieves guild, and they have all the skills and training to perform thievery within a city or a village. Another idea for a thief background in the Viscounty in this campaign, you could be a swashbuckler. Swashbucklers usually are pirates along the rivers of the Velvedivre River and the other two rivers going south into like Gnomes. It's a fascinating class, the swashbuckler, because not only does he have the dexterity and nimble enough to fight on deck of a ship, but he'd be useful in a raid and when performing these operations. Very quick with the sword, and they follow up with all those abilities of a rogue. A brigand is more like a robber on the merchant roads of the Viscounty. Brigands was typically an evil class over the generations of D&D from the last 40 years, where they're more inclined to not only rob and pillage like a bandit would, but they would also murder somebody. They would kill them for their loot. Where a robber or a bandit are more likely just stand and deliver statement, take all your stuff, and then let you go or just tie you up. And I think also brigand is more likely to kidnap somebody for a ransom than maybe a bandit, but they'd probably both do that. But brigands tend to be more ruthless. A thug is somebody that's just a hired hand that probably works for the Thieves Guild or the local tavern, where somebody will hire him to just beat somebody to a pulp. A thug would be the type of rogue that does not put a lot of thought into his robbery. More likely to just brute force, beat somebody to a pulp just to take their coin purse. A cut purse, on the other hand, are more sneaky. They blend in with the crowd, they weave their way through crowds, and they pick the purse or cut the purse off, or a belt pouch, off an unsuspecting target without being caught, without being seen. A burglar is the type of rogue that will break into a shop to steal any valuables there. A beggar is more like a cut purse, that they're on the streets. They ply in information in their eyes of the guild. They're aware of who comes in and out of a gate or a tavern, and they beg for coins. And as they do, they could probably pickpocket at the same time. A spy archetype would be more of a role-playing type character, where he would infiltrate with disguises into an organization to get information. And then once he's in there, maybe he can do some sabotage or some stealing as well. A scout, much like a spy, would scout out a location of an organization, like the Temple of Elemental Evil. They would scout out the actual temple to find out if there's anything going on there, any activities, and then report back. Detective, another rogue archetype, would be somebody that maybe the rogue would investigate for a target or some merchants to bring that information back to the Rogues Guild to make future plans for any kind of raid or activity. A pirate, obviously, like a swashbuckler, he plies his trade on the rivers or the lakes or the oceans on a ship, and they rob and pillage other ships or other villages along the shoreline. A smuggler is somebody that's a great archetype that will actually pretend with disguise to be something else, like a merchant. A smuggler would hide illegal contraband on like a wagon on a caravan or a ship and get it past the authorities into a city or out the city to sell for a profit. Also, that's a useful skill for the Temple of Elemental Evil agents to be able to get supplies in and out of Null without the authorities of Verbobonc finding out about it. An Arcane Trickster, another fascinating rogue that became really popular lately in the newer editions of D&D, where you get a multi-class, a magic user thief. So usually the magic user spells will supplement their thieving activities to make them more successful. Then, of course, the last one I could think of is Treasure Hunter. That's just an adventurer, another word for that. Somebody that seeks out treasures, joins adventuring groups to investigate and to seek out artifacts of rare treasures in dangerous dungeons. So that wraps up all the archetypes that I can think of. Now, when it comes to old D&D, you can roleplay these archetypes easily with the role class. I have that argument where old D&D, you only have the thief class. And new modern players that play the more modern editions of D&D think that all thieves are the same, all fighters are the same, all magic users in old D&D. But that's not true. It's far from the truth. I can make 10 fighters, I can make 10 rogues, and all of them will be completely different. And as in my previous video, I talked about role-playing at D&D, and the reason for that is the 8 pillars of role-playing that I use to run any version of D&D. And to create a unique character, a unique rogue in any edition of D&D, all points to the following: the environment that they're in, how they present themselves, how you role-play that rogue, the equipment that they use, the creative use of those components, their race, their class, and their background. So we went over these different locations where a rogue can be from, and obviously these locations are different backgrounds, and they'll flavor the kind of rogue you are. Like if you're from Dyvers and you get involved with the Assassin's Guild and the merchants, you're that kind of rogue. If you're from a small village like Penwick, like a farming community, you're that kind of rogue. That background of where you were raised and how you grew up and the skill sets that you have from before you became an adventurer flavors the kind of rogue you are. Also, how you dress, how you present yourself, the style of clothing, the color of your clothing. You can pass yourself off as just a merchant, or a caravan guard, or a bouncer from a tavern. And then, of course, the equipment that you're using. Do you use a lot of bows? Do you use a lot of short, wicked blades? Do you use a longsword? Do you use the equipment that you use? Do you have specialized equipment for your thieving abilities? Do you have certain kind of weapons that you use? Are you a bow user, a crossbow? Do you use a sap? Do you use a sling? You use short, wicked blades. That all influences, or a rapier, that all influences the kind of style that you project to call yourself any of these other archetypes that we went over. Your race and class has a lot to do with that too. We go back to this list here. All those reasons can actually influence of you being one of these archetypes. If you're a swashbuckler, you have a definite look about you, the kind of weapons you use, the kind of armors you wear, how you talk, your background, your skills. You're a great swimmer. You have great use of a rope, of tying knots, of sailing a boat. Brigands have a different skill set based on their background and race and equipment and what they wear and the weapons they use. So does thugs. I can see just a big bruiser thug that has a club. Maybe it's two-handed. And he just brutally just pulverizes anybody. And he has the dumb, brutish look about his face, I guess. That would be a good idea for a projection that he would be like. I can see a beggar being scrawny and malnutrition and rags, completely unassuming. I can see a spy or a scout, somebody that uses... I can see a spy or a scout, somebody that uses a disguise. Through the whole campaign, even the other players don't know it. He could use a disguise to portray himself as something completely different. Like, you can actually change your race a little bit from like half elf to full human. And you can become a merchant or just a caravan guard. And none of the players or any of the NPCs in the campaign would be the wiser. A pirate is much like a swashbuckler, same thing. A smuggler could be unassuming with disguising as well. A smuggler could be also portray himself as a seagoing merchant a river merchant or a caravan, and he maybe doesn't wear any armor. He keeps himself low key. You don't see any weapons. He's just wearing robes. Maybe no. A smuggler. He could be unassuming. A merchant could be like a caravan merchant that doesn't wear any armor and he doesn't have any visible weapons, and he seems frail and weak, or just large and lazy, but he seems to be unassuming. You could portray him any way you want. An arcane trickster, you can portray him as a straight up wizard, or you can portray him as anything you want in the world. And it's because the whole idea is not how you perceive yourself, but how all the NPCs in the world perceives you, and how they interact with you, how they react to you. And it also helps when it comes to role playing, how the other party members in the party react to you as well. Because role playing doesn't exist in a vacuum either. When you have to be able to role play for others to be able to role play as well. So anyway, what I'm saying is you can put this label, this name on your character sheet and be that if you wanted to, just by that other list I showed you before of the way you're raised, how you act, how you present yourself, the clothes you wear, the kind of weapons you use, the kind of armor you wear, the kind of specialized equipment that you use, your race and class, and your background skills. Okay, so this wraps up my video on rogues and thieves in the Viscounty area for the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign. If you have any comments on my video of what I presented here, please leave your comments down below here in the channel. And if you want to support my work to make more future videos, please go to my Three Orcs Patreon. All the donations I can get from there greatly encourage me to make more videos. Thank you for your time, and happy gaming.